everybody, Chef Todd here. Welcome to Under the Apple Tree, where I build, grow, and of course cook my way towards a handmade life. 'Tis the season for pumpkin pie, so today I'm going to share my recipe for a cheesecake style pie. I just love this crust. You're going to want to save the recipe. It can be used for these sweet pies, but I also use the same recipe on my quiches. So sit back, enjoy, and get in that holiday spirit. So our first step in a pie is obviously making the pie crust. This recipe uses both butter and shortening. The butter is there for just for flavor. It adds a layer that just other fats don't add. Whereas the shortening really adds flakiness and creates that layer effect in the crust, making it so you get that melt in your mouth flaky kind of flavor to it. So we're going to use a food processor today, and to start with I have the 2 tablespoons of shortening in there. We're going to break up this butter a little bit more and drop that in the food processor as well. These are great tools. If it's one that you don't have, it's a great one to invest in. I probably use this more than I would use my mixer. We have our 1.5 cups of flour here. As always, I use an unbleached partial whole wheat. So that's going to go in there, and that's the only 2 ingredients we start with. We're going to load that up. Pulse it a few times till it gets the consistency of coarse sand, about the size of peas. And what this is essentially doing is creating that fine mixture of butter and flour that once it starts to warm and cook, you create those steam pockets, and that's what creates your airiness and your flakiness. Stop once and scrape the sides down. Just make sure everything is incorporated and we're getting a good consistent mix. So here we have ice water. Put ice cubes in there, water, and let it sit in the fridge so it's very cold. As it hits this, it's going to mix, but it's not going to allow the butter to liquefy and kind of dissipate on us. So we're going to start with about 2 tablespoons, stir it a couple times and see where we get, and see how much more we need to add. Then we have our 1/4 teaspoon of salt we want to make sure we get in there. And that's just going to help activate things and kind of make sure, and reinforce that rise and make sure that we get that taste sensation. Even a little salt, if you don't taste it, it helps you kind of sense the other components that are there. So this is 2 tablespoons of water. It's pretty good. We're going to add just a little bit, maybe about 1/2 tablespoon. Pulse it another couple of times. So everything's got to come that way, and all we're going to do is stick our hands in there and kind of ball that back up. We'll roll that up. Wrap it in plastic wrap and let it sit in the fridge for about 1/2 hour. So our dough has sat for a little while. It's kind of chilled out now, and what we're going to do is just roll it out to about 10 inches wide to fit in a standard pie plate. So we have a little bit of flour here. Make sure you use plenty of flour to stop your dough from sticking to your work surfaces, including your rolling pin and your fingers. So that's that. The beauty of this thing is it makes it easy to transfer over as well. Just a little bit. Make sure we're covered on the sides, and then go through and kind of pinch your design in there. Again, you want to make sure that your dough is really cold when you're working with it, so it holds a little bit. With all our lights, ours is getting a little warm here, but it definitely is still holding up all right. Now when you can kind of stretch it over, fill in the spaces that might have a little lack of dough there. And then we're going to poke some holes. You want to aerate it so that you don't get bubbles and the big misshapen crusts. So we have the two-step process there. We're going to poke holes in it. And we're going to use pie weights for the first 10 minutes that we cook it. Mine are made of clay, just bought them from a cooking supply store. You can also use black beans, dried garbanzo beans, whatever. Just put them in that same aluminum foil and spread them around. This is also going to protect the edge of the crust from burning. So we're going to throw that in the oven at 350 degrees for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, take the pie weights and the aluminum foil off and give it another 10 minutes to crisp up and dry out a little bit. So for our filling, we're going to start with cream cheese. We're going to cream that in a bowl with a mixer here, and then we're going to add a cup of sugar. So with creaming, what we're looking for is getting some good air in there, really incorporating the air and softening up the fat in the product, which is usually the cream cheese like this or butter for a lot of cookies. And then we're going to take our cup of sugar and put that in there. And kind of cream those together. Again, make sure you take time to scrape down the sides every once in a while. And then we're going to add our eggs. We have 1 whole egg going in here and 2 egg yolks. I'll show you how to split those, how to separate those as well. So 1 whole egg's going right in there. Always crack your eggs on a flat surface versus the edge of a bowl. It prevents pieces from actually falling into your whatever you're making, your mixing bowl. For our yolks, what we're going to do is crack the egg in half and kind of toss it back and forth. As we do this, the white slowly kind of finds its way off. You need to get in there with your fingers and pull that last little tail off once in a while. There we go. And that's going in there. And then 1 more of those. So that gets set aside and we are back to mixing. Incorporate our eggs in there. At this point, we're adding an ingredient and mixing, pretty much to get everything else in there, making sure that we scrape the sides of the bowl between adds. Get our half and half. Of course, our star of the show, we have the pumpkin going in now. Again, this is a really nice demonstration of why we make sure we scrape the bowls as we go along. You can see even with mixing we still have a nice yellow border along this where the pumpkin hasn't been mixed in thoroughly yet. So I want to make sure we kind of push everything in there. We'll run that mixer 1 more time and work our seasonings in. That would be our vanilla, cinnamon, and ginger. We'll kind of scrape and fold the rest of it in, transfer it into our crust, and we'll be ready to bake. Our pie crust is all done. Nice golden brown, flaky. And all we're going to do is take our filling, pour it in there, and bake this guy off. A little shake to make sure we got all the holes filled in. We'll bake that for 50 minutes at 350 degrees. So with a good pumpkin pie, we of course need an excellent whipped cream. So we're gonna whip some up here real quick. And our secret ingredient is some homemade Kahlua. So we'll have a little coffee flavor to it. Step one is to make sure we have very cold utensils. The bowl and the whip have been sitting in the freezer for a couple hours to make sure they're nice and chilled. We're going to start with putting the cream in here, and then we're going to whip that. As it starts to get, form soft peaks, then we'll start putting our ingredients in. But first we're going to need to whip it for a little bit. Have to taste it, make sure we're good. Perfect. Let's see how our pie is doing. That was a lot of fun. I really like this recipe just because it takes the standard pumpkin pie and changes it just a little bit. The texture of the cream cheese is excellent. So I hope you guys enjoy this one, and try that whipped cream with some other liquors too. I especially love it with like a peach schnapps or something along those lines. So remember to follow us on Twitter at Appletree Show, subscribe and comment below, and thanks a lot for hanging out. We'll see you next time under the apple tree.